And when Islamic people came in, basically, largely, you had to submit to Islam or be killed. Now, they didn't necessarily require conversion. You could remain as a Christian and live in an Islamic area, but you had to accept a status that was lower than the Muslim people in your area. You had to pay a special tax, your church meetings were strictly regulated, and most of all, you were absolutely forbidden to evangelize. Absolutely forbidden. The only people that you could lead to Christ were your children. That was it. So that was the only way the church could grow in any way, was by having more and more children. So you see that these Christians in these lands were often persecuted or assimilated by their Islamic conquerors. Now, a turning point in this whole Islamic invasion, when it was sweeping aggressively through up here and up through Spain into, actually over the Pyrenees, into France, and it certainly had the potential and the dynamism to sweep up into France and to invade Western Europe as a whole, not only Spain. The turning point was in the year 732 at the Battle of Tours. There, a Frankish force defeated a Muslim army. Now, this map, reflecting the year 800, reflects what it was like after the Battle of Tours, where the Islamic armies were beat back to this line of the Pyrenees Mountains, which separates Spain and France. But you can see by this Muslim Spain how much it was encroaching up into France and into Italy, and the certain momentum was to lead them even beyond. This little incursion up over the Pyrenees and into France had great potential for being the launching pad for an Islamic invasion into the rest of Europe. But again, the critical turning point was in the year 732 at the Battle of Tours. There, a Frankish force defeated a Muslim army. Now, it was somewhat of a small battle, but it turned back the expansion of Islam into Europe, and it put a man named Charles Martel into prominence, establishing what's known in France and in European history as the Carolingian line. The Carolingian line was especially noticeable for the grandson of Charles Martel, whom we know as Charlemagne, the same one who was crowned by the Pope. It's a very interesting battle. In the year 720, Islamic armies crossed the Pyrenees to what today is southern France, and they won one big battle at Narbonne and then lost another. But they were very wise in their military structure and their leadership. They had a very good retreat from the battle, and under good management, it left them able to fight another day. Their leader was known as Abdul Rahman, and he brought his force of perhaps 15,000 warriors up through southern France into a place between Poitiers and the shrine of Martin of Tours in this general area of southern France. This place, the St. Martin of Tours, was a place renowned for its spiritual associations, and it was only 200 miles from Paris. Charles, who without the official title was practically the king of the Frankish kingdom, he comprised both he used a force with both French and German soldiers, or in those days Germanic tribes. And we know very little of the details of the battle, but it took place on a Saturday somewhere in October of 732, and they stood very strong against the Muslim invaders and turned them back. Charles was given the nickname Martel, which means hammer. And if the Islamic forces and Abdul Rahman would have won that battle, European history would have been very, very different. But this Islamic tide was turned back at that point. Next item on our list for important events and challenges of the period of the Christian Empire are the Crusades. Actually, the Crusades began in the year 1096. So from the year 1096 to 1248, that's approximately 150 years, there were actually 7 different crusades, each with the supposed goal of protecting pilgrims and recapturing the Holy Land from the Muslims, or at least in weakening Islamic influence in that part of the world. Many people are confused about the Crusades, and there's a huge misconception about it. A lot of people think that the Crusades were an effort on behalf of European Christianity to defeat Islam and to, gain territory from them. That's really not how it started at all. It all started with a man known as Peter the Hermit, who had been on a pilgrimage to Palestine, and he experienced cruel treatment from the Muslims. When Peter came back to Europe, he decided to use all of his influence to stir up the Christians against the Muslims. So he saw the Pope, who at that time was Urban II, and the Pope approved the first crusade. A crusade is a war on behalf of the cross. Peter got on his donkey and traveled from city to city throughout Italy and France, stirring up passion for the war. Finally, in the year 1095, Pope Urban II gave an impassioned appeal for his army to march to the Holy Land and to win it back. This is what he said: "A horrible tale has gone forth. An accursed race, utterly alienated from God, has invaded the lands of the Christians, depopulated them by the sword, plundering, and fire. Tear that land from the wicked race and subject it to yourselves." And then the people cried out in response, "Deus vult, Deus vult," which means God wills it, God wills it. Now, notice this. As the Crusades went forth, it was most notably just a matter to address the mistreatment of Christian pilgrims in the Holy Land. But it flowed from there into being something much, much bigger. Especially when, to motivate soldiers, Pope Urban II promised that fighting in the crusade would earn you time off of purgatory. We're going to talk more about that in a future session, but just put that in the back of your mind. There was a spiritual reward promised to those who fought in a crusade. Well, when they fought the Crusades, there was actually limited success for quite a period of time. The Crusaders went in and conquered, and you can notice on the map these small red areas on the coast of Palestine. They were actually able to occupy land and to defend it against the Muslim invaders for some period of time. The Crusaders ruled Jerusalem and other notable cities, but eventually the areas fell to Islam again. In the judgment of most historians, the Crusaders were only able to succeed because the Muslims didn't really take the threat very seriously. Once the Muslims really took it seriously and assembled serious armies against the Crusaders to drive them out, they were able to do it because it was very difficult for these Europeans to travel this great distance and effectively fight a war so far from their foreign land. But for a period of time, there was a kingdom of Jerusalem, a Crusader kingdom. There was a principality of Antioch, again, ruled by the Crusaders. These were areas that were occupied by the Crusaders. Over time, they shrunk. They weren't able to hold the whole area. They were beat back to the area right by the coast, and then eventually they were pushed out altogether. Let me share with you two of the biggest misconceptions about the Crusades. Number one, the first misconception is that the Crusades were offensive wars against a peaceful Muslim Middle East. You know, there were the Muslims in the Holy Land not bothering anybody, just being peaceful and good, and those horrible Christians came from the West and attacked them. That's not the truth. Indeed, they were exactly the opposite. They were defensive wars. They were fought in direct